about the time of birth. In the Gospel of Luke, we're told that while they were in Bethlehem, it came about that as they were there, while they were there, it's a past tense word, they were there. It's not like we typically think, it's not like the Hollywood recreations of the Christmas event where as they're cruising into Bethlehem, there is the boundary, there's a sign that says Bethlehem, population 524. And right at that moment, the final contraction seizes Mary and she gives birth right on the spot. This is not what Luke is suggesting to us, y'all. In other words, they'd been there for a while. Well, how long is a while? A day? A week? 2 weeks? I don't know. I wasn't there. But it wasn't like we typically think, like as soon as she got to Bethlehem, man, it just all sort of happened. Just right there in front of God and everybody. It's just evidently not. There's a early 2nd century text. It's not in our Bible. It's a Christian text, not a rabbinic text, not Josephus. It's called the Proto-Evangelium of James. It's a kind of a amplification of gospel stuff, traditions and what have you that had grown up since the time of Jesus and on into the early 2nd century. It says that Joseph saddled the donkey. That's the first time in all of history that we hear about a donkey. You notice that it wasn't in the Luke account that we read, right? I remember I was teaching a Sunday school class downstairs, and I think it was in the old chapel. And I said, so where would a carpenter have gotten a donkey anyway? Why would a carpenter own an expensive to keep up animal like a donkey? And somebody in the back room said, I bet that he borrowed it from a good neighbor. And I'm going, but we don't have to go there because there's not any suggestion in the text that we have to solve. There's no presence of a donkey that we have to explain. It's not there. It's there in the Proto-Evangelium of James, which is a book that didn't make it into our Bible, but it's not in Luke, not in Matthew either. Anyway, that's kind of just for the fun of it. They drew near to Bethlehem 3 miles, and then Mary says, "Take me down from this donkey." Oh, so we do have a text that says that Mary gave birth right when they were approaching Bethlehem, but we don't have a historical text. This is not a biblical text. This is kind of a Mad Magazine of early Christianity. It's not New Testament. It's not a part of the biblical revelation or tradition. Take me down from the donkey because that which is within me is pressing in me to come out. And so he took her down from the donkey, and there he found a cave. This is interesting because it's the first literary reference to Jesus being born in a cave. First literary reference. Remember we looked at the very beginning, the various types of Christian art. One is showing Jesus as being born in a cave. The other that is he's born in a freestanding stable or barn. You remember that? We looked at that at the beginning. Okay, he found the cave. So keep that in mind. And now we're going to move to the next topic, the stable. It says in Luke that she gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in cloths or swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger. So from that one word, we build, there were animals there, and there was a stable or a barn there. There's all kinds of hay and stuff like that there. Of course, the little drummer boy, too. He's over in the corner. Luke just failed to mention him in the text. But so laid him in a manger. The word manger comes from the French manger, which means, French students, to eat. Our word to munch in English and German is kind of related to that, oddly. To manger, to eat, to munch. And so this is some sort of a feeding trough. It's an animal trough. Notice that Jesus is here being put by Mother Mary into the trough and it is made of cross members of wood, right? And this is what we're used to. And it has a lining of hay and that sort of thing, so it's nice and comfy. We get this idea of a cave from Protevangelium of James, but also the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, there is a cave complex underneath the church, and then even beyond, where evidently this area was being used for animal husbandry and for storage and maybe as a root cellar because they tend to stay cool and stuff like that. Another very early reference, besides the Proto-Evangelium of James, comes to us from an early church father. And I tend to pay close attention when anybody's last name is Martyr. I don't know about you, but you know what I'm saying? So Justin has earned his chops the old-fashioned way. He signed it in his own blood. He's an early Christian who died for his faith. In a work that he wrote called Dialogue with Trypho, he says Joseph took up his quarters in a certain cave. There it is again. So we've got it underneath the Church of the Nativity, cave. We've got it in the Proto-Evangelium of James, the very early 2nd century. We've got it in another 2nd century work, Justin Martyr. And then we also have it in the works of Origen, that's O-R-I-G-E-N, not I-N, the Bishop of Caesarea, who was originally from Alexandria. In Bethlehem, the cave is pointed out where he was born, and the manger in the cave where he was wrapped in swaddling clothes. And the rumor in those places and among foreigners of the faith that indeed Jesus was born in this cave, who is worshiped and reverenced by the Christians, meaning by us. Now to the rabbis. The rabbis in the earliest rabbinic collection that we have, it's called the Mishnah. Some things serve as a screen that protect against uncleanness. That is, overhanging crags of rocks, caves, and cliffs. So what are they talking about uncleanness? Ritual impurity, like touching a corpse or touching a leper or a woman having her time of the month. Ritual impurity. Someone dies, they become a source of ritual impurity, that sort of thing. All right. Another text in the same place in the Mishnah, Rabbi Judah says, any tent is a dwelling not made with hands. Okay. Any tent that is not made with the hands of a man, they don't count as tent. And the rules regarding the contraction of ritual impurity apply to clefts of rock and overhanging rocks. So there are ritual impurity laws have to do with human-made homes, like walls that are built up out of blocked rock and that kind of thing. But what doesn't apply is any part of a home that is some sort of like maybe built over top of a cave that we would call a basement. And those don't allow ritual impurity to go up into the rest of the home. So if Jesus was then born in an area not in the main part of the house and in a naturally occurring cave area, then Mary could give birth to the child and not risk making the rest of the family or the rest of the clan ritually impure. Ritual impurity is connected via Leviticus chapter 12 for the birth of a male child for 40 days. So that the woman is ritually impure, the child is ritually impure for the first 40 days. The birth of a female child, it doubles. It's 80 days. And so this would then, if this was a home setting, a family setting, would paralyze that family in terms of religious observance, in terms of doing business, exchanging money, preparation of food, and that kind of thing for the better part of 3 months, 80 days. So it's possible then that Mary was allowed to house in this naturally occurring cave so that a situation like that didn't develop. Remember, we looked at the very beginning, that first slide, that we saw, one type of manger scene. Here we see a completely different kind of manger scene, and this one is in a naturally occurring cave. So that's part of our artistic tradition, believe it or not. It's not emphasized much, but that seems to be where we're going with the archaeology as well as with ancient literature. And it makes sense based on Jewish ritual purity observance. The manger. She gave birth to her firstborn, wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger. Here is a manger. It's made of rock. They have a lot of that over there. You have to do something with the stuff, right? So people who are expert workers of stone fashion tools and implements, all kinds of even furniture and that kind of thing out of rock. This is this is a manger at Chorazin. Jesus ministered there. Matthew 11, Luke 10. He says, "Woe to you, Chorazin! The many mighty works that were done in you been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented a long time ago." This is in one of the villages that Jesus visited. It's just up a drainage system, about a 45-minute walk from Capernaum, where he had his headquarters for 3.5 years in his ministry period. You can see here in this particular manger, a drainage hole has been cut, because if this was outside, it got rained in or whatever, you didn't want the animal's food to get soggy. No one likes soggy cereal, right? I guess animals included. Anyway, you've got a drainage hole there. Here's another one, and this is also at Chorazin, another manger. This one is at Megiddo in the Jezreel Valley, or the Valley of Armageddon, and is probably for more than one animal to eat from at a time. And this one is a nice example because it has tethering stones on either side of the manger. That's kind of cool, right? Here's another one. It was found in the Golan Heights. So these are all just examples of biblical mangers. Just thought that you might want to reach out and touch reality for a moment. The inn. It says that Luke says that she gave birth to her firstborn son, laid him in a manger, because there was no, and he gives an explanation. They're in this kind of pastoral setting. Maybe small animals were kept there from time to time. If it's cold outside, or you had marauding thieves or something like that. It also doubled as a root cellar and as a storage place, and maybe even for overflow when lots of folks came in from out of town who were in the clan. So laid him in a manger. There was no room in the inn. The problem is that we know exactly what this word means, and we always have known what this word means. The Greek is kataluma, and it's used in other places, even in the Gospels, like Mark chapter 14. Jesus uses this word. He says, "Go prepare the Passover. Follow this man, and wherever he goes in, you say to the householder, 'Where is my kataluma, in which I may eat the Passover?'" It's a guest room. It isn't an inn. It's a part of a home, a private home, a home where a family lived. So there's not any Motel 6. There's not any cheesy commercial with the guy playing the little violin. You know, no one's leaving the light on for you. Remember the commercial, right? It's one of my favorite commercials, really, of all time. But this is not what's going on. There are other problems with associating this kataluma with the word inn. Bethlehem is 5 miles from Jerusalem, but caravan stops in ancient Israel, as well as in other places in the Middle East, are every 20 miles. So it's 15 miles too close for the next caravan stop. So Bethlehem, approximately 400, 500 people in Jesus' day, was a small farming, agricultural, as well as animal husbandry community. That it was not a caravan stop. The caravan stopped in Jerusalem, and then in Hebron is the next place. That's 15 miles further south. And so this idea of inn and manger and cave is suggesting to us that instead of being rejected by an innkeeper, more than likely, it's, you know how the Gospel of John says he came unto his own and his own did not receive him. His own. That's family language. more than likely the first rejection that Jesus experienced was not at the hands of a businessman, it was the hands of a close relative. That's rejection, y'all. And you know what? He knew it was going to happen because he's been around forever. Whose going forth is from of old, from all eternity. He knew it was going to happen, and yet he voluntarily laid aside all of his rights to privilege and full membership in the family and a comfy place upstairs and stuff because of what? Because of you. Because of me. That was the extent that he was willing to die to self to reach us. Here's a picture of a kataluma. You go upstairs, it's kind of an upper room. Usually have to climb a ladder. This is a reconstruction at an ancient village in the Golan Heights. And that's what it looked like. This is where Joseph and Mary should have been. But they said, you know, we have questions about the origins of this pregnancy. We're not really sure about your marital status situation. We sure don't want the whole clan to become ritually impure and paralyzed both religiously and economically for 3 months, possibly, if it happens to be a female. And not everybody in the family was there when Gabriel said it would be a son, and they didn't have ultrasound yet, right? We want to think through all of these dynamics. So here's some pictures of homes, first century homes. This is at Nebi Samuel, which the Bible calls Mitzpah. And you can see, if I can get my pointer, here's where the man-made wall ends, and this is bedrock. And you can see that someone has chiseled out or enhanced a naturally occurring cave. They've built a home over a naturally occurring cave. These are first century homes in the Judean hill country from the first century. Okay. Here's another one, and you can see this one even more easily. Come on, pointer, right here. Home built on top, naturally occurring, probably enhanced cave below. Here's yet another one. This is bedrock. This is where man-made wall ends and bedrock begins. So everyone in ancient Israel knew about this, especially in the Judean hill country, also in Samaria, that you build a family home over top of a pre-existing cave, and you use that cave for all of these different purposes that we've talked about before. We'll do one more thing and then we'll conclude. Shepherds and wise men. Today, the shepherds are told, in the city of David, you're going to find a Savior who is Christ the Lord. Verse 12, this will be the sign for you. You will find the baby, the brephos, wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. This word is used all over the place in Greek literature. It's used in the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible 300 years before Jesus was born, called the Septuagint, and it means suckling infant. It means a newborn baby. You get this all over the Gospel of Luke. Here it is again in verse 16. And the brephos, or the baby, as he lay in a manger. So this is what the shepherds saw. In the Gospel of Matthew, we're told this, that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, and there were magi who came from the east. That's a long way as compared to the shepherds who were in an adjoining field, possibly. So they have a long journey, and they have to wait for the star to appear and all this other stuff. And then Herod secretly, verse 7, called the great ones, the exalted representatives, and ascertained from them the time that the star appeared. So Herod is really locked into when did this star appear. And it says, go, this is what Herod tells his henchmen, go and search for the child. It's not suckling infant. It's not newborn baby. It is one who is paidiou, or paideon, is one pedos, like a podiatrist, you know, one who works on the feet. This is the Greek word for a toddler. Matthew has a different word for Jesus than Luke does. Luke is reporting the event as it occurred at the moment of birth. Matthew according to the wise men and Herod and, killing the babies 2 years old and under and stuff like that, is dealing with a Jesus at a different developmental stage in his life. He's now able to walk. He's moving about by the locomotion of the feet. And that will then explain why it is that that the Magi came in to the house. Verse 11, came into the house and saw the toddler. Does this make sense? So, ladies, if your husband is a carpenter, that's Joseph, right? And your baby was born in a cave, barn, stable, whatever you want to call it, are you going to stay there for 2 years? If the guy's a carpenter, get out, okay, we got the birth under control now. Get out there and build us a house. So they have a home by the time the wise men have gotten there. The wise men and the shepherds never see each other. They never cross paths. They're 1.5 years at least separated from one another, although we find on a regular basis in our modern depictions, we find the wise men that are there presenting their gifts right along with the shepherds. See his crooked staff right there? And that's kind of natural because we want to telescope the whole story into one Christmas cantata. It would be a long one to stay at church for 1.5 years to get everybody together there. So we're telescoping time. But we have to recognize this. And I think that that's important. The star is probably in fulfillment of Numbers 24:17, that there will be a ruler. A star will appear. He will have a scepter in his hand. So that's probably what the wise men are going for. This is my concluding remark. I had a very interesting experience when I was teaching at the Church of the Annunciation in Nazareth. We had discussed this. We were right beside some first century excavations of homes from Nazareth in Jesus' time, first century homes that, by the way, yes, they had the cave underneath with the home built on top. They're doing this up in Galilee as well. And we discussed some of these dynamics, had been studying together for about 1.5 weeks or so, and so everybody knew we're dialed in on archaeology, we're dialed in on ancient texts, and we're really going for reality because we know that the real is always better than the make-believe. It doesn't matter how you can sensationalize something, or you can doctor something up, or you can just kind of give cultural accretions and overlayers onto stuff. Nothing's better than the real and the original. It's got a power and a force. The truth has a power and a force that is able to set you free theologically, spiritually, set you free. And so that's what I've been dialed in all along. And so we're talking about all these dynamics, stuff that we've just discussed today, tonight. And a lady toward the back of the group, she said, well, then what's left of Christmas? If the wise men and the shepherds aren't there, and the manger was rock, and the stable was really a cave, and on and on and on, what's left of Christmas? And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to, you don't want to shut discussion down, so I'm trying to think of what's the best way to respond to this. And somebody else in the group over on the other side said, what's left of Christmas? Yeah, that's exactly what she said. And that's all that matters anyway. So with the kettles and the guy ringing outside of Walmart with, Santa on the rooftops and the 8 prancing reindeer, with the elf on the shelf, or if you're celebrating Hanukkah, the Mensch on a bench, or all of these various things, the presents, the Christmas tree, the decorations, the last minute wrapping, and stuff. Just keep in mind, keep your eye on the prize. What Christmas is about is the last thing that's left. It's about Jesus. He hasn't changed. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He will be the same this Christmas for you as He was in times of all eternity and in that manger that one not so silent night. Questions or comments?
Thank you, appreciate it.
This is just really fun and engaging material. I hope that it was helpful for you guys. Hope Christmas means even more because you've reached out and touched reality this Christmas season. Anybody else? Pastor Ron, you want to conclude us in prayer?
What's happening next week?
Next week is, I announced it a couple of times, but next week we've got we're tracing the journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem using satellite imagery and going over every point along the way that had some major event that happened in Joseph's and Mary's Bible that they would be talking about as they walked along past it. I think you're in for a couple of new major discoveries next week as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our videos. If you're benefiting from the content that you're receiving from them, please make sure that you're following us on Facebook and that you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you never miss a thing. While you're at it, share our content with your friends and family. Encourage them to follow us as well. Thanks for helping us to reach as many as we can with a powerful message of God's Word in its original context.